Welcome to the first ever counselor sponsored Douglas County School District event, which is targeted toward all parents in our community, the pandemic, and your child's education. My name is Aaron Reagan, and I am incredibly honored to serve as the lead counselor for Douglas County School District. In this role, I have the incredible honor of supporting counselors all throughout the district, K through 12. And we are really excited to be here tonight. And more importantly, that you have taken time out of your Thursday evening to join us. We're really lucky to have Nick Thompson with us tonight. I'm going to bring him on in just a moment. But before I do that, I wanted to share a few things. We've all been living through this once in a lifetime pandemic. And let's be honest, COVID can feel really confining. And I can tell you from my perspective, there's a whole lot of living happening in my house, way more than I ever expected. I think sometimes you feel like there are limited opportunities for travel, for fun. At times it feels like there's a wet blanket that has been thrown over everything. And there are moments when I forget that we're in COVID. I don't know if any of you have had this experience, but there's a number of times that I've left my car, walked to the door of a business, and then realized I forgot my mask. And then I have to go back to the car. And I think part of this is just not wanting this to be real. And we've been doing this for a long time. And so I was speaking with my wife last night about this, and we were kind of reminiscing about times in our life when we felt confined, like we were living in a foreign landscape. And we started reflecting on this experience that we had back in 2012. And what happened at that time was that I took a job at an international school in Tokyo. And so we moved with our then 5-month-old and 3-year-old to central Tokyo. And when we arrived, we found ourselves in this really tiny hotel room. I was looking today at my bedroom, and I believe that that hotel room was smaller than my bedroom, and I don't have a large bedroom. And we had suitcases piled everywhere. We were almost literally on top of each other. And then I had to go to work, which meant that I had to abandon my wife with our 2 small and very dysregulated children who were going through culture shock and jet lag. And, I had to leave her. And so we had no cell phones. We had no car. We were in a city where we didn't speak the language. And it was super hot, very humid. And then we discovered, to our chagrin, that they have very large cockroaches in Japan, and they fly. And so we were left to, or rather, my wife was left to manage our kids in the heat. She would strap on the baby and then take the stroller and try to navigate this foreign city on her own. And you might imagine this was not the best thing for our relationship. And after a few days, I was starting to think that I had made the worst mistake of my life. And then I came home one day and Lisa said, I made a friend. And I said, really? She said, yeah, she's fantastic. She's from Malaysia. She speaks 4 languages. She's lived here for a really long time, and she's super nice. And this person was Mina. Mina was married to an English gentleman, and she was charming, bright. And Mina took Lisa under her wing, and really our whole family. And she took her to the grocery store and explained what all the products were, because you had no idea. You couldn't tell. They just had these like cute cartoon figures, and you couldn't tell if it was a bottle of bleach or a bottle of milk. She helped her navigate the subway system, and they explored Tokyo together. She introduced her to the playgrounds that would work well for the kids, connected her with other people in the community. And It was this really incredible experience. And we stayed in that hotel room for 6 weeks until we eventually got our own house. It was a very small house. Time passed. November arrived and it was time for Thanksgiving. And we decided that we would have an American style Thanksgiving and host that at our house. So went shopping, did preparations, but we didn't really have an oven. All we had was a Cuisinart toaster oven. And in that toaster oven, we cooked a boneless turkey, 3 apple pies, and a bunch of sides. So the night of the event came, we hosted 45 people at our house. We had to clear out the closet and convert it into a buffet. There were people sitting on the floor, in the halls, on the stairs, but it was a really, really great event. And it was at that moment that I knew we were going to be okay, because we'd managed to achieve a semblance of community. We had pulled off Thanksgiving. And when I thought about this, I thought about Mina and how tremendously helpful she was, and her arrival at a time when we needed her most. And so why tell this story? Well, Mina, I think, is emblematic of a lot of counselors that we have in our district. And I can't tell you how honored and privileged I am to support the counselors that we have in this district. They're the most incredible professionals I've ever worked with. And so if you find that your family is experiencing difficulty, if you feel like you're in a foreign landscape, if you are trying to help your child and you're not getting anywhere, please, please, please reach out to the counselor at your school. Something that I want to say, in addition to counselors, we have incredible social workers and school psychologists. They constitute our mental health team in the district. And these people didn't just wander into these jobs. They're really hard jobs to get, because the level of education that is required requires a tremendous amount of commitment, not just financially, but in terms of energy. We're talking about a 2 to 3 year full-time graduate program with really thorough and robust training. So please reach out to them. You have incredible resources there. Now, with regard to tonight's program, I just want to mention that we have, and you may see this on the YouTube link at the bottom. It's tinyurl.com/Nick Thompson event. We would appreciate it if at the conclusion of this, you could take 30 seconds and fill out a feedback form for us. We're hoping to bring more content to you like this in the future, and it would be really helpful for us to know what worked well and what could be better. So please, if you don't mind taking the time, we greatly appreciate it. Now, I have the distinct honor and privilege of introducing Nick Thompson, and I think you'll get a sense of Nick, his personality, and his sense of humor as I go through this. Nick attended the University of Colorado at Boulder, where he earned a 2.4 GPA. It took him 5 years to graduate, which his parents were not aware of until recently. Nick's entire family traveled from Fargo, North Dakota to Boulder to attend a graduation ceremony in 2004, where Nick pretended to graduate dressed in full cap and gown. Nick would not actually graduate until a year later. Nick's mother recently toured his office and looked at his framed diploma and noticed it was dated 2005. After viewing the diploma, Barb had several follow-up questions. After graduating from CU, Nick sold used cars in South Dakota, but was soon fired because, in the words of the used car manager, Nick wasn't Sioux Falls Dodge material. Nick failed Psych 101 and never earned an A in his major, and yet thought it would be a good idea to pursue a graduate degree so he could become a psychotherapist. Due to his 2.4 GPA, no program would take him. Nick flew to North Dakota to beg the chair of the social work program to accept him into their online program. As a result of Nick's self-advocacy, or most likely pity from a kind woman. Nick struggles with several executive functions, mainly organization, sustaining effort, and working memory. Due to his struggles, Nick has had to create systems and routines that allow him to remain an independent and employed member of his community. Nick has great parents whose main love languages were consistency, consequences, and an unwavering belief in their son. Nick has a private practice in Boulder, Colorado, and he enjoys giving presentations to school staff, middle and high school students and parents. Nick has been working with youth and their families for over 13 years in a variety of settings, including middle and high schools, private practice, residential treatment facilities, and detention centers. Also, Nick has a podcast called Perspective for Parents. It's excellent. I've listened to it myself. I encourage you to do the same. So with no further ado, I'd like to introduce Nick Thompson.
Okay. Did that work? The thumbs up on the, did the slideshow show up? Okay. So, hello. When someone told me how many people signed up for this, and as I think about that right now, as Aaron was speaking, that's all I could think about. So while I was thinking about that, I noticed I became highly anxious. I'm super anxious right now. And I'm all alone in my office in Boulder. So when I'm anxious, I like to share with people I'm anxious. I like to invite them in. And this is something that your child can do, or you can do. So I'm just going to jump into it. This is called real play, not role play. Okay. So first off, what's going on in terms of the physical sensations that are occurring to signal to me that this is anxiety? My voice is kind of wavering a bit. My chest is tight. Yeah, that's going pretty good. Heart rate's up. Kind of some jelly activation in my legs. My knee is bouncing. I don't know if you've got a knee bouncer in your house or if you're one. It's like I don't know if you noticed, but like I'm out of breath. Shouldn't be. Just been sitting here for the last half hour. I don't know if you can see that, but they're going. Whoa! I'm not faking that, I promise you. Those are going. Okay, what else? I'm sweating profusely. I am pitting out hard. I set the thermostat in here to 68 degrees, as the lowest it goes, but I'm sweating. Okay, so those are the physical sensations I'm experiencing. And later on in this presentation, when I talk about anxiety, I'm going to share with you all that there is a perfectly good reason for every physical sensation of anxiety. And one of the best interventions that you can do for your child is explain each sensation. By doing that, the emotion then doesn't become something uncertain, something to be scared of. You get to demystify this beast known as anxiety, a flavor of fear. We don't need to be afraid of it. Meet and greet, get to know it. Get to know how it shows up in your body. The other thing I wanted to share is when it comes to performance anxiety, if your child experiences this, if you do, research shows that the best way to deal with performance anxiety is not to try to be calm. So we've done it wrong with our youth forever, generation after generation. We've been telling our kids when they come to us nervous, rattled, anxious, we've told them, just be calm, just be calm, try to be calm. And what the research shows is it doesn't work. And even if it did, it wouldn't be effective. So what they found through research is that the best way to deal with performance anxiety is to reappraise the anxiety as excitement. Why that works, if you think about it, anxiety is a high arousal negative state. And we've been trying to get ourselves and get our students to a low arousal positive state. There's just too much difference, too much space in between those things. So what they found is the best thing that you can do is not change the arousal or the level of the body activation, but instead go from anxiety to excitement. Because excitement is also high arousal, but it's a positive state. So the thing about the sensations, so I shared with you, I'm a little tense, chest is tight, getting a little sweaty, hands are shaking. Now I got a few butterflies in my stomach. So those are what I feel when I'm anxious. Well, guess what? What do you think are the physical sensations that I experience when I'm excited? That's right. Very similar. I get a little tense. My heart rate goes up, get a little sweaty, knee starts to bounce. The physical experience of anxiety and excitement is almost the same. So that's the beauty of this research, of this thing that your child can do, is they don't have to go to calm. They can go over to excitement. And when you think about it, going to a state of calm might not be the best energy that you would want when it comes to a performance. Like, think about it right now. If I had gotten if I was in a state of calm, like a level of calm where, that like after you get a 90-minute massage, that level of calm, that probably wouldn't be the energy that I'd want to give to this presentation. There's some level of like, hey, what are we doing? Douglas County. All right. Yeah. Okay. What would you like to talk? No, that wouldn't be the right energy. We want to bring an elevated state of excitement to so many of the things that we do. And here's the thing. So how do you move to excitement? Change your focus. Change your focus. I don't have to change the experience in my body to move over to excitement. I just have to change the story that I tell myself. And how I can do that is by changing my focus. So if I want to make myself anxious right now, what could I do? I could say, I could create some thoughts about people are judging you. Your hands were really shaking. That looked bad. People are probably already checked out right now. I can't even see anybody's face, so I don't even know if this is going through. That'll provide some anxiety. I don't know if I'm gonna get through this presentation, all the slides. I rarely do. That will feed anxiety. Now, if I want to move over to excitement, I can change my focus. I can say, this is incredible. This is incredible. From where I came from, my experiences, to be able to present to this many people is crazy. It's unbelievable. I have huge gratitude for that. Okay, so that can move me over into excitement. What else? There could be a parent listening to this tonight who takes one thing with them, one thing that they learned, so they show up differently for their child. And in turn, that benefits their child's development, which then could benefit their child's development. Like, that's crazy to think about. And while I do that, I am shifting myself over to excitement by changing my focus. Change your focus, change how you feel. Change your focus, change your story. And another thing to do, which research shows, is just this. Breathe into the sensations and say out loud, I'm excited. I'm excited. I'm excited. And it's actually shifting right now. I can feel it. I share this with students oftentimes, that they can feel the sensations. They don't need to avoid it. They can breathe into it and they can announce to themselves or out loud that I'm excited. And this actually works to move them into a state of excitement. And pre-pandemic, I was at a high school and I was walking around and it was a passing period and these students were just walking by and there's like this high school student. It was so great. I had presented there like the month before and this high school student is walking and like with his boys. So I found this really great, touching. He yelled out, I'm excited before every math test. And I just love that. I just love that you could share something like that. And something, when you think about it, really simple, but that can make a drastic change when it comes to showing up for different performances, whether that be a speech or a game or a recital, whatever it is, it'll work. Okay, just wanted to share that before I get to the first slide. Okay. So usually when a school calls me or a parent calls me, they're concerned about a particular behavior. And when a school calls me, they want me to come out and talk about a particular behavior. The parent calls, they want me to talk to their child about a particular behavior. And I believe we focus too much on the behaviors. And I'll be sure to explain why. It often looks something like, hey, Nick, can you come talk to our youth about the dangers of vaping, the dangers of pot, dabbing, binge drinking, having a balanced relationship with social media, self-harm, whatever it may be. And these articles get sent out. Oftentimes people will send them to me, like these parenting articles that say, how to talk to your child about the dangers of vaping, how to talk to your child about the dangers of binge drinking, and so on. And I think all the articles, I think there's a good argument to be made that all of them could be replaced with one article entitled, How to Talk to Your Child. Or even better, how to listen to your child. I'm not saying it isn't important to educate yourself somewhat on these behaviors, but what I'm telling you is that the connection, the communication, and the relationship is way more important than you educating yourself up and providing some tidbits, some pearls of wisdom, some scary stats for your child. And the thing is, the behaviors are always changing. They're escalating more quickly than ever, more rapidly. And while, yes, it is important to educate ourselves somewhat on these things, by the time we educate ourselves on something, it might be something new. I was talking to a college student recently over the virtual thing. He's like, yeah, next semester, I don't think I'm gonna be smoking pot, Nick. And I'm like, yes, nice. Yeah. And he was like, yeah, I'm getting into that Scandinavian moss. I'm like, oh, what? Moss? What? I didn't know about Scandinavian moss. I don't even know he was messing with me. But what happened when he shared that with me is I was unfamiliar with that concerning behavior. And because it was unfamiliar, I went to a state of fear. And when you go to a state of fear, you will disconnect from the moment, from the conversation, and ultimately your child. So the most important thing to do is stay there and stay present. And how you do that is to not go to a state of fear. And my argument is focus too much on the behavior, you will go to a state of fear. Because parents who are listening to this, how many of you vaped at lunch when you were in high school, made TikTok videos and communicated with your friends via Snapchat? I doubt very many of you, parents, did that in high school. So because you're unfamiliar with the behavior, that's going to put you in a state of uncertainty. Uncertainty equals fear. So, and now the concerning behavior I get the calls about the most, a lack of engagement with school. And yes, it is concerning. But if we too quickly go to a state of fear, we won't be able to hang in there, have a conversation with our youth, and be able to figure out why. Because the whys are different in terms of the lack of engagement with school for young people. There isn't just a one-size-fits-all issue going on with our students currently. And again, the piece about fear, always remember that. When you go to a state of fear, you're disconnecting. And your child knows. Young people are very good at picking up on when somebody is in a state of fear. It's like a scream that goes up in the conversation. So when your child shares something with you, discloses something with you that you find concerning, problematic, and you jump into a state of fear, reactivity, screen goes up. And your child knows that it went up. And there's a little bit of them that goes, oh, yeah, I can't have this conversation with mom. I can't have this conversation with dad. So I'll have this conversation with my peers, with the internet. So if you want to be a part of the big conversation, the big ones. It's going to be crucial for you to work on not going to a state of fear. Where do you want to be? State of calm. Calm is contagious. And during this time, during this pandemic, that's what I see as what our youth need the most from us. We're so focused on our words, on our lectures, on our advice, our pearls of wisdom. But really, it's about the energy that we can provide. Adolescence, ages 10 to 25, can be a turbulent time in terms of emotional intensity. And this is an adaptive quality handed down from millions of years of evolution. But often in this temperamental period, then you add a pandemic to that. Well, what do our youth need? They need our calm. And here's the thing, you can't fake calm. You can't. I promise you. You can't be like, no, everything's fine. No, I totally understand. No, tell me more. Your child knows when you're not in a state of calm. Parents will often ask me, like, what's the one thing I can be doing right now to help support my child? I think it's about filling up that reservoir of calm so that when your child comes into the room dysregulated, you can share a bit of it. So whatever it is that you do to fill up that reservoir, call that self-care, relaxation, stress management, whatever it is more important now than ever for parents to build up that reservoir so that, again, when their child comes in state of dysregulation, angry, overwhelmed, frustrated, agitated, whatever it may be, you can share a bit of your calm. Human beings co-regulate. That's what we do in ways that we don't even fully understand. We got like these mirror neurons going on. It's wild. But the thing is, if I'm in a state of calm and somebody who is dysregulated were to walk into this room right now, I wouldn't even need to say anything. Just me being in a state of calm would help that person regulate. Their breathing would start to match mine. Their heart rate would begin to match mine. So when you're thinking about what should I say to my child, how do I intervene, how do I influence, what's the intervention, one of the most important things that our youth need, our students need right now, is our ability to share our calm. When you're concerned about a particular behavior and you think WTF, go with it. It's right. WTF. Think that. What's the function? What's the function of this particular behavior? When you focus on the function, the beauty of that is you won't go to a state of fear. I'll explain a bit later. What's the function? What you want to do is focus more on the message and less on the medium. The medium is the behavior. And that's so often what we're focused on. It gets our attention, puts us in a state of fear, often because it's uncertain or scary. But focus on the message. Remember this, all behavior is communication. I'll repeat that. All behavior is communication. So when you're concerned about your child, ask yourself the question, what are they communicating? What are they communicating to me, to their peers, to the world around them? Because again, if you can connect with what the message is, you won't go to a state of fear. And the beauty is, the messages never change. Generation after generation, thousands and thousands and thousands of years. These are the messages that children and adolescents have been sending to themselves, to their peers and their parents. And they'll never change.
Nick,
yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
There's been a request to change your view. And so if you go to the top screen and click view options, and then go to side-by-side mode, you can kind of show your presentation, and then folks that would like to see more of you. Sorry.
Okay, where's that at? I don't have a cursor, but I see remote control. There's there's a pause, share, Q&A, participants, stop video.
The top right-hand corner, it says view. There's a teeny little button.
Oh no, yeah, I don't have that.
That's all right. That's all right.
Under more, maybe? Record meeting info.
I think it says view, upper right-hand corner.
Yeah, I don't have that on my screen.
It's okay. You're doing great. Sorry to interrupt.
No, I'm sorry.
Don't worry about it.
Remote control, maybe? Let's see here. Okay, I'm sorry. Now I'm having all types of difficulties.
I'm sorry.
No, it'll be good to practice going back to a state of excitement. I can do it again. I've done it once. Uh-oh. Oh no. I'll really feel some anxiety. Oh no. There we go. Everything's okay. You got this. That's called positive self-talk. Not an entire game changer, but it helps. Lots of you got this. Okay, are we good? Is that back on? Oh, maybe while I'm out of the screen, I'll see if there's something I can see where it says view.
Yeah, if you click on your Zoom screen rather than your keynote.
Yeah, I'm clicking it.
And so when you should see the three of us presenters at the top there. And then on the right, to the right of that, there's a little teeny button that says view. You're still in your keynote. So
No, but I'm clicking the Zoom. This has got to be riveting for all of you watching. Has requested remote control, approve. Okay. Did that do something?
no, I agree with Aaron. Just go ahead and go with what you're doing. Sorry to mess
Okay.
with you.
Sorry to break your stride.
No,
We'll push on.
no worries. Okay. Okay. Back to it. 4, 7, 8 breath. Breathe in for 4. Hold for 7. Identify the emotion. Rattled. Exhale for a count of 8. Forcibly out of the mouth. Put your tongue right here. Mantra. Small bites, Nikki. You got this. All right. That's a little helpful thing. I'll share that later. That's one of my go-to 4, 7, 8 breaths. The most calming breath. Add a mantra at the end. Okay. So the beauty of focusing on the messages, they never change, and you will be able to connect with the message. The messages that young people have been sending to themselves and to others, to their parents forever are these. These are the main ones. I need to belong. I want independence. I want to take risks. I'm trying to figure out who I am. I'm going to challenge my parents and other authority. I want to challenge the status quo. I want attention. I'll start positive. If I don't get that, I'll go negative. I'm avoiding something. I'm hurting. I'm overwhelmed. And I don't need to be in your household, in your living room, wherever you're at, to know the answer to this. Parents, when you were in high school, did you know any of these? Are these familiar to you? Not even back in high school. How about this week? Are you familiar with any of these when it comes to this week? Have you felt overwhelmed? Have you been hurting? You've been avoiding something? Yeah. You'll be able to connect to these because they're human. And that's why we always want to look for the message, because that will be where we can connect. We won't go to a state of fear. We can stay present in the conversation, not time travel as a parent, right? Pulling from your past, pulling from other people's past, and then getting back into your DeLorean and traveling into the future to make catastrophic predictions for your child. That's what happens when we focus too much on the behaviors. We time travel around. We can stay present when we focus on the message. When it comes to what's the message, why aren't young people connecting with school, have a lack of engagement? There's lots of different reasons. But I see these things as the big ones. There's not a whole lot of consistency. It's like you're hybrid, then you're remote, and you're fully in person. And like talk to some students, they don't have class on Mondays, and then next week they don't have class on Wednesdays. And it's difficult for our students to get their feet set with the lack of consistency. Young people need that level of consistency oftentimes to develop the routines and the habits and the buy-in in order to do school. The other thing is the structure of a school and the structure that it provided. For many students, they need that structure. I know I did. I barely got by with having full-time school, having a lot of people care, tons of consistency with structure, accountability, lots of relationships. So, for most students, school works because it's not in your bedroom. And so there's all these environmental cues that cue our youth into, oh, I'm doing school. So many of the young people I talk to, they're like waking up 5 minutes before their first class, rolling over, turning their camera off and joining a Zoom class, doing their homework. And I say, you can't do school and your homework in the same place where you sleep or watch YouTube videos or play video games. Remember, the brain will prefer the easiest or most pleasurable activity done in any given environment. That's what it does. We're so impacted by our environments. That's why I'm doing this presentation from here, my office. It wouldn't go very well if it was done from home. You might think it's not going well here. You would not want to see it if I did it at home, because my home cues me to relax, to watch TV, to put on mesh shorts, put my feet up and relax. And later on, I'll talk about what you can do with remote learning to create more structure consistency. But yeah, so much of the structure is gone. So much of the relationships are gone. For so many students, they needed the attendance person to notice that they were late, or the coach to say, if you miss another class, you're not going to play on Friday. Or the science teacher to say, I noticed that you stayed after to study. Human beings are social creatures. Mental health is created socially. And so the relational piece is different with hybrid and remote learning. So that's having an impact on our kids. And all of those things combined make it difficult to hold our youth accountable. Okay, so why is there a guy? I'm gonna do a time check here. I've never gotten through a presentation fully. I think it's like a core fear of mine that I like someday run out of slides and not know what to do. Okay, so I have until 10. Okay, I got a little over an hour. All right. So why is there a dude wearing an FBI jacket here? All right. So when I worked in high schools and residential facilities and detentions, when a young person was in a state of high emotional reactivity, and I needed to de-escalate or have a conversation, it sort of felt like a hostage negotiation. Sort of felt like a crisis negotiation. So one night I was thinking, like, you know what? I'm going to look up the FBI's crisis negotiation protocol. Just curious. Because sometimes when I was working with youth, it could feel that intense. The emotions were that high. And that's not just youth. That can be adults too when they're in a state of high level of emotional reactivity. So I looked it up. Check it out. It's everything that parents, that school staff need to be doing for our youth. That's all right there. I love when I found this out, because I think oftentimes when people listen to me, they may think like, all right, here's this Boulder hippy dippy granola therapist with his psycho babble. He's probably going to light a candle. Those are fake, by the way. Check this out. All right. So you might be thinking, yeah, like, of course, this therapist is going to come in and say, yeah, I need to listen and feelings and all that. You don't need to listen to me on this one. Believe the FBI. I would think they would know what they're talking about when it comes to trying to get to a level of influence with someone who's in a state of high emotions, and it's all there. So it starts and is sustained by active listening. We have to listen actively to our youth in order to get to empathy. Empathy is one of these buzz phrases that I get a kick out of. Everybody's saying empathy now. And then people will say things like this: I'm just an empathic person. And that really doesn't make sense. You don't arrive with empathy. You have to listen first. It's not like you just jump in and it's like, I'm here, I have empathy. No, you have to listen so that you can understand, that you can see how they see it. Put yourself in their shoes. That's only done through the aid of active listening. So you listen actively, then you can get to empathy. And once you're at empathy, then you can get to rapport. And it is only at rapport that you can get to any level of influence. But where do parents usually jump in on this stairway? Try to point at it. Influence. Yeah, when emotions are high, listening is key. And it's not like, right, so you did active listening, got to empathy, rapport. Rapport is where they're like, oh, they're listening, they understand. And it's a back and forth. It's not like you did all that last week and got to a level of rapport, and then something new happened this week. There's a new social trauma or whatever. So your child is in a state of high emotional reactivity. It's not like you can just be like, so can we just start at influence? Remember last week we did the active listening? Could we just does that carry over? It doesn't carry over every single time. Active listening. I created an acronym for active listening, just to be helpful, because that's another buzz term people use, active listening. Many of you might be like me when I first heard it. I'm like, I don't know what that is. So if you do these, this would be active listening. Acronym, I love acronyms. OPERA. O stands for open-ended questions. Those are questions that start with how or what. You may be thinking that why is also an open-ended question, but we usually want to avoid why. Why avoid why? Can you hear it? Why were you there? Why did you do that? Why didn't you turn it in? Within why, there's a tone of judgment. So we want to have open-ended questions, questions that can't be answered with yes or no or finite amount of answers. How and what are the good ones? P is your presence. Focus on your presence. How's my tone? How's my body language? Am I communicating a calm, relaxed, present, engaged, caring presence? Yeah. Watch your cadence. Watch how you're sitting. If your child's sitting, maybe you don't want to hover above them. That can feel intimidating. If they're in a state of anger or rage, oftentimes you don't want to sit right across from them. That can be intimidating. Come alongside them, come down to their level. And by the way, if your phone's out, you're not present. Even if it's shut off or upside down, that's not full presence. When we're talking to our youth, we need to get the phones, the screens away. We are not fully present when our phones are in our hands, out, upside down, downside, whatever you want to call it, on or off. That's my belief. E, emotional labeling. This is where you say things like, wow, that sounds really frustrating. Sounds like you were sad. Sounds like you were really angry. You try to label the emotion that they're experiencing or we're experiencing. Daniel Siegel says, name it to tame it. If you can name the emotion, what occurs is you activate a parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest part of us. It turns our emotional reactivity down just by naming the emotion. Oh, and cool research. It shows that the larger, more nuanced our youth's emotional vocabulary is, like the more words they know, that directly correlates to being able to manage their emotions. Big emotional vocabulary increases their ability to practice self-control, to regulate themselves. Emotional vocabulary is incredibly important. Cool thing is, you don't even need to get it right. Like you might be saying like, oh, it sounds like you were really sad. And they'd be like, no, I was angry. Sometimes it's even better when that happens. Because think about it. What had to occur there was You said something, provided an emotional word. They brought it in, did a little calculation, and so, no, that's not right. It's actually this. All of those processes are done in the prefrontal cortex, which is where you want to bring them up to. That is our more rational, reasonable, logical, weighing the pros and cons part of our brain. R is for reflection. That's just reflecting back in your own words what you've heard. Shows that you're listening, shows that you care. And it also sort of helps your child to be able to see the situation, see things more objectively, and see themselves more objectively. Just reflecting back in your own words what you've heard. Call it paraphrasing, call it what you want. A is affirmations. You want to sprinkle these in when it comes to active listening. This is where you point out and share the strengths of your child. You do that, you'll have great conversations with your child. You'll have great conversations with anybody. In fact, you do those things, you could have a successful private practice. I'm serious. Oh, but here's one note before I forget. I was working with this dude, high schooler. I don't know, what was it, last week? He was like, hey, did my mom go to one of your silly little talks? I was like, why? And he goes, yeah, she was like a weird, like robot listener lady last night. She was like, how was your experience of that? It sounds like you were feeling frustrated. What I'm hearing you say is that, point being, this will work, but you have to make it a part of your authentic self. It has to be genuine. The minute that we become robotic or mechanical and disconnect from the authentic, we're going to disconnect from the conversation. So I encourage you to do all these things, but make them your own. And sometimes that takes practice. Okay. This is one that, yeah, I'm going to try to be a little more thoughtful on this topic. So I'd like to talk about how we talk about our kids, because I think it's having a huge impact on them. Usually, when parents talk about their kids, what they do is just list their achievements, their accomplishments, their grades, their badges, their clubs, their scores. And our young people are hearing this. It's having a big impact on them. I think the message is that when we just talk about academic and other extracurricular outcomes, when we talk about our youth, the message is to young people that you only matter when you achieve. Because that's what we talk about. When we're concerned, that's what we're concerned about, the lack of achievement. When people ask us, when other parents ask mom, dad about me, that's what my parents share. I was pre-pandemic, I was at a get-together barbecue thing, and I went up to this mom, and I was like, how's Billy? And she was like, Billy's great. Billy's really great. He has a 4.7 GPA. He's in the IB program at his school. He's the captain of the lacrosse team. He's a member of the National Honor Society. And we're thinking Cal Berkeley in the fall. I was like, no. How's Billy? Not what's Billy. Sometimes we just list their achievements. And I work with so many high achieving young people that are so impressive on paper, but feel so hollow inside. And I think a lot of it has to do with how we talk about them. I was talking to a young lady not too long ago, and she was crying on our call because the best school she got into was Vanderbilt. I was like, what? I thought that was one of the good ones. I can go get that rag known as the US News College Rankings. But just something to think about. How do you talk about your child? How do you talk about other people's kids? Because if a young person believes that they only matter to other people, and especially their parents, when they achieve, well, that's going to be an anxious existence. Because you never arrive. It's the hedonic treadmill. You just need to keep going. Keep those plates spinning. I kind of like this because this is a slide, but then it's my office. Hold on. Show and tell. Can you still hear me? Somebody jump on if you can't hear me. Sometimes I take my headphones off.
We hear you.
Great. This is a reminder in my office for the students I work with that are super high achieving. What that stands for, that's next to my graduate degree. What this stands for is I attended the 202nd best graduate school in the country for social work. There were 203 of them. I did their online program and I begged my way in there. I was accepted with exceptions. So I share that. That so often where that piece of paper comes from doesn't matter. There's never been a family, there's never been a group of parents who've walked in here, walked over to those and gone, come here, sweetheart. You see that? You went to the University of North Dakota. Let's get out of here. There's an Ivy Leaguer downstairs. That's never happened. Never happened. And so many careers, where you get that piece of paper from doesn't matter. Now, when I'm working with a young person who gets into a highly selective school and they want to go there because they want to challenge themselves, because they have a great program in their interests, because they have a professor there that inspires them, well then yeah, go. That's fantastic. But don't go there solely based on the fact that it's ranked higher. Now, for the students I work with that are underachieving when it comes to academic outcomes, what I share with them is, I need that 8.5 by 11-inch piece of parchment. I need that to do what I love every single day. I wouldn't be talking to you right now if I didn't have that piece of paper. So that allows me to do what I love. So that's the other side of this conversation. I hope that makes sense. This is my transcript from CU, undergrad. Go Buffs. That arrow points to the fact that I failed general psych. I'm a psychotherapist. Check out that first semester. What do you got? F, withdrawal, F, D+, withdrawal. As my mother would say if she was here, Nicholas focused more on the social than he did the academic during his time in Boulder. Now, I share that not to say bad grades are cool. They're not. But what I do want to share is, why I share this is because so many young people are developing sort of their interests, creating a plan based solely off of these grades. They're sort of like these navigational beacons that direct you towards interest and career. And they don't need to be. Choose what you like to do. Getting good grades is great. But if you get a C in something, D in something, an F in something, but you feel like you're interested in it, don't let these limit you. There's another grade. You may think that's a little bit high. Yeah, I never got an A in my major. And why I think this is important is, yeah, young people are building sort of a game plan towards career earlier than ever. And it has a lot to do with these grades, these scores. I was at a 7th grade leadership academy last year. I'll repeat that. A 7th grade leadership academy. Yeah, it's cool. 7th graders can be leaders. I just wanted to share that. I thought that was like, wow, 7th grade leadership academy. Anyways, they're like, my message to the 7th graders was something like, hey, try a bunch of stuff. See what you like to do. some version of that. Now's the time. And moving forward is the time. Try new things. Don't limit yourself. And there was a 7th grade girl sitting in the front row, and she was just like looking at me like stern, just like, and she would do a lot of this. I knew she was not picking up what I was putting down. And then afterwards, she shared that, you know, I was thinking about learning an instrument. It was something that I've always had an idea about, a hope, a wish, I guess you could say, to learn to play an instrument. But the thing is, I moved schools last year, and so I was joining a class that had already had a year of band. So by joining band, I would be 1 year behind. So I brought this idea up to my parents about, you know, taking band so that I could learn an instrument. And we had a conversation about it as a family. And what we decided was, this is a risk that we just cannot take. And while that's an extreme case, I think you point out the extreme to point out the shifts that we're making. Young people are limiting their interests, the classes that they take, the clubs that they join, based off of if they think they're good at it, because they got a good grade. And I'm going to move on so I can get to more of this presentation. Everything feels great for our young people. This is a student that I work with. And the idea was to create a pie graph that shows your self-worth. Why do you matter? So breaking down the different roles that make up her self-worth and how significant each one is. Look at that. What is that, like 60% student? Musician, that's cool. But even that's graded. You get a grade for like jazz band or whatever, your first chair, your second chair. So what is that? 80% of her self-worth is graded. That's going to be an anxious existence. And the parent of that youth was kind enough to do a self-worth pie graph for her. The second biggest one is volunteering. Guess where mom volunteers? At the school. Yeah. Can you feel the weight? Can you feel the weight that that puts on that student to achieve? Not only for herself, but for her mother. So much of the mother's identity is wrapped up in the child. So many young people, or excuse me, so many parents over-identify with their child. And when you do this, you're going to over-identify with their successes and their failures. And they ain't good for our kids. It's hard enough for them to build an identity, their own self-worth. I like to say this. If my mom ever heard me say this, she'd be so sad. Not super sad, they're kind of frustrated. I had this thought not too long ago. That my mom cared, but she didn't care that much. And what I mean by that is I'm lucky because my mom was always there and she always cared, but she wasn't wrapped up. Her identity wasn't wrapped up in me. When I was failing, she wasn't failing. When I was succeeding, she wasn't succeeding. Now here's a balanced student that I've worked with. It's not that any of those roles are wrong. Being a great student is great. But when it becomes too significant of a part of our self-worth, when things get out of balance, things can go poorly, especially when those roles are graded. So I love this one. And by the way, you can tell this young person is from Boulder because they are a guardian of a pet. That's right. In the city of Boulder, you cannot own a pet. I'm serious. It's written into law. Where you're at, do you own pets? Come on. All right, sorry. So think about your questions, your concerns, and your compliments when it comes to your child. Are they built mainly on these outcomes, these academic outcomes? Your questions, are they about academic outcomes and other outcomes? When you're concerned, are you concerned about those outcomes? When you compliment something, is it about that? Switch it up. And I'll talk a little bit later about how we can switch this up. And just to do a time check, because I get so scattered, I have how much time? 45 minutes, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So conditional love and praise results in conditions. Big one being anxiety. So I'm going to talk a bit about anxiety. That's one of the calls I get. My child has anxiety. We all have anxiety. We all descended from super anxious people. It's the reason we're here. It used to be a super adaptive quality. I like to think 80,000 years ago, there's like a super chilled out, like Cali bro version of a caveman. And there's like a rustle in the bushes. And he was like, that's probably nothing. It was a saber-toothed tiger and he died. So that isn't your ancestor. Our ancestors were the ones when there was a rustle in the bushes. I'm going to act this one out for fun. When there's a rustle in the bushes, they go, ah! How'd that go? That was fun. I haven't done this in here before. So the first thing I wanted to share about anxiety was it gets a really bad rap. It just immediately gets associated with a disorder. We all have anxiety. Oftentimes when I give student presentations, a parent will like meet me right afterwards and like super concerned and say some version of, I heard my child has the anxiety. Yeah, we all do. We all do. Now, it can get to a point where it can be classified as a disorder, but I think it's important for us to change the conversation. Not all anxiety is bad. And here's the thing about anxiety. Anxiety isn't the issue. It is our relationship with our anxiety that is the issue. It is our anxiety about our anxiety that is the issue. And what usually happens is a young person feels some sensations in their body, maybe has these nervous thoughts. They go, oh, and they experience this emotion called anxiety. And that feels weird and uncomfortable. So then they're nervous about that experience. So you could say they're experiencing anxiety about their anxiety. Then they go tell one of their parents, I think I have anxiety. Let's say this particular parent finds that highly concerning. So now there's anxiety about anxiety about anxiety. That's a vicious cycle. Remember, the emotion is never the issue. It is our relationship with our emotions. A student made this for me. This is an amygdala. This is the threat detection, threat activation center of our brains. It's a key center for fear, anxiety. And what it does is it takes in our 5 senses, our 5 apertures into the world, monitors our thoughts. And when it thinks we're in danger, it freaks out, starts pulling levers, pushing buttons, and releases adrenaline and cortisol into our system to get us prepared for fight or flight. Yeah. So this is this center. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that you can do to manage anxiety. I did at the beginning, just sharing with you how to reappraise anxiety as excitement, but there are other things that you can do in terms of managing dissolvement. Oh, one thing, I'll talk a little bit about it later, is name it. Name it to tame it. Don't just say anxiety, but give your amygdala a name. It works. Have your child name their amygdala. My amygdala's name is Andy. Yeah. Me and Andy talk all the time. We've been having many, many conversations today. Because what you don't want to do with anxiety, Andy, or your amygdala, is to resist it, to not listen to it, to not pay attention at all to its alerts. Andy doesn't like that. Andy will keep coming back, and eventually he's got a buddy named Panic, and Panic will kick your door in. So I know Andy, I know his tricks. I appreciate him. I know he's helped me out quite a bit when there was actually a life or death situation. He came in, saved the day. But for the vast majority of the time, Andy, unfortunately, misperceives discomfort as danger. Maybe I'll explain a little bit more about that later. So when you name your amygdala, you immediately create a more spacious relationship with your anxiety. And that's what we want to do. That's what we want our youth to do. So many people are over-identified with anxiety or other emotions. They say things like, I'm anxious. No, you're not. That wouldn't be accurate for me. I'm Nick, and I got this amygdala thing, and often Andy releases chemicals into my body, and I experience an emotion that could be called anxiety. See all the space there? It's not I'm anxiety. We don't do that with other systems, other functions of our body. You wouldn't say, I'm heartburn. No. Say, I'm experiencing heartburn. In the same way, we experience anxiety. It's a fleeting emotion. It can be. The thing about anxiety and other high reactive emotions is it takes over, it hijacks the brain, puts us in that fight or flight, which doesn't allow our young people, our students, to access those things that we're always talking about, the executive functions. They're not available when anxiety is high. Andy takes over. Again, thinking it's a life or death situation. We don't need to be accessing our executive functions at this moment. So oftentimes you hear students say, like, I studied, I knew everything for the test, I sat down, took the test, couldn't remember a thing. That's because of the amygdala. So we have to teach our young people how to quiet that emotional system, how to activate the parasympathetic nervous system to calm our amygdalas down. Executive functions. There's all types of lists of them. It's action, it's memory, it's emotion, it's effort, it's focus, it's activation. I remember like 5 years ago working with this young person, and I was asking him about his week, and he's like, yeah, tomorrow my executive functioning coach is coming over. And I was like super intimidated. Like, well, what's that? In my mind, I was thinking, like, I'm going to be replaced. What is an executive functioning coach? I go, what do you do with your executive functioning coach? And he was like, oh, he like comes over and helps me organize my backpack. And I was like, oh, okay, organizing. All right, got it. Now, I don't say that in any way to like minimize the role of great executive functioning coaches. There are many, I know many of them. But I like to share that because so many people use these phrases and they don't know what they mean. Parents have been executive functioning coaches forever. The whole like, sweetheart, can you keep your hands to yourself? That's an executive functioning coach. Sweetheart, did you put your bag by the door? Are you ready for tomorrow? We're going to leave in 5 minutes. Should you use the restroom? Do you think it'd be easier to focus if you put that away? No, that is all executive functioning coaching. So you want to share that with you if you're intimidated by the phrase. Don't need to be. When it comes to coping skills, I get so often asked about coping skills. And I'm not a big fan of the term. But I'm going to provide some. Because I think we can do more than coping, because so many things that get described as coping skills are actually just distractions from what is. Distraction from the experience of now. And I get it. For at certain times, a distraction can be all right, going to your happy place. But I always think, you got to come back. You can't stay in your happy place forever. If I'm sitting in a classroom and I'm just in my happy place, the bell rings, I'm going to have to come back to the classroom. So I like talking to young people about how they can make the classroom, their house, whatever the normal situation is, how to make that their happy place. And if we can't get to happy, the okay place. But I am going to share the greatest coping skill ever. So buckle up. Drum roll, please. This is the greatest coping skill ever. Feel your feelings. They're called feelings. We're supposed to feel them. If we're just supposed to think about them, they'd be called thinkings. In order to feel them, we need to find them. So many young people are disconnected from their body. I talk to a student, they'll be like, I'm so anxious. And I go, how do you know you're anxious? And they'll go, you ask weird questions. I'll say, I know, but how do you know you're anxious? I'm anxious, Nick. How do you know you're anxious? Well, I'm thinking about the test that I have tomorrow. No, those are your thoughts. Emotions live in your body. Sure, cognition has a bit to do with it, but they're mainly in our body. And so many of our young people are disconnected from their body. Therefore, they're disconnected from their emotions. So number one thing, find it and feel it. I love this slide. I think it's my favorite slide to share with young people. This shows where different emotions show up in the body, where they activate. Like that bright yellow being the most activation, and the light blue is sort of a numb feeling. We don't have to be afraid of these things. Meet and greet them. They're just sensations in our body. We make them uncomfortable when we resist them. And we resist them oftentimes because we're unfamiliar with them. It's a high level of discomfort. So I love to share this with young people. Look at anger. Activates in the fists, chest, and jaw. Makes sense. It's an attack emotion. Oh, emotions tell us to do one of three things: avoid, approach, or attack. Anger is an attack emotion. Fear, anxiety, those are avoidance emotions. That's it. Avoid, approach, or attack. I think that's cool. Disgust shows up in the throat there. I think the design of that is like if we ingested something that was dangerous, we'd throw it up. Shame looks like Spider-Man. Again, we don't need to be afraid of these things. Young people have a good laugh about love. Here's the thing about emotions. Get this. An emotion, whatever it is, can only exist in your body for 90 seconds. That's it. Now, this is where you might say, like, I was listening, but now I'm not. That's absurd. That can't be true because I've been angry for years. No. If you experience an emotion for more than 90 seconds, it is not because of the initial trigger or the initial emotion. It is because you are keeping that emotion going with your thoughts. You are feeding the emotion with your thoughts. Isn't that wonderful? This is one of the greatest things that I get to remind myself of and other people. When you're in a state that you don't like, when you're having a pity party, that if you're in it for more than 90 seconds, you don't need to. If you don't feed it with your thoughts. I haven't experienced this one like right over there in my office at the end of the night. I'm having my pity party. My problems are so big. And God, I got to do so many emails. I don't like emails. And why did that person say that? And oh, I have that thing tomorrow. And I'm in this state that I don't like for 5, 10, 15 minutes, whatever it may be. And then I catch myself and go, oh, I'm doing this. Like this, I'm keeping this going. This isn't real. It's real in that I'm feeling this, but it's only real because I'm choosing to feed it with my thoughts. And if I think about something else, if I choose to focus on something else, if I bring myself into the present moment to slow cognition down, I don't need to experience this for much longer at all. Here's some of the signs, symptoms of anxiety. Again, get to know them. Oh, I wanted to share with you. One of the cool things that you can do is share with your young person why these are there. They all make sense. Okay, so let me break down some of the ones that I shared with you. Okay. When somebody shared this with me, it was a game changer. The reason I sweat when I get anxious is because Andy, my amygdala, remember, goes into fight or flight. And what it does is it thinks I'm about to run. It looks at the situation. I'm staring at a screen and it's deciding between fighting and running. And it's going, I don't really see anything to fight. Like punching the laptop would get kind of weird, but we're feeling a high level of discomfort. So let's run. Let's run away from here. So Andy is creating a system where he's making me sweat to cool down my body because he thinks I'm about to sprint. Isn't that nice of Andy? to create that perspiration in order to cool the system, which will allow me to run longer away from this laptop. When someone shared that with me, I was like, wow, there's nothing wrong with me. Now, that's not serving me sitting alone in my office right now as I sweat. No, but I know why it's there. And that immediately changes my relationship with it. I'm not scared of it. I know why it's going on. Is it slightly inconvenient? Sure. But there's nothing wrong with me. What else? Butterflies. The reason I feel butterflies, or your child does when they feel anxious, is because Andy, amygdala, anxiety, the situation is life or death. Remember, that's always what it's thinking when it sees discomfort. So what it does is it takes the fuel that's being used for digestion, and it's thinking, this is a life or death situation. We don't need to be digesting food right now. So it takes that energy away from the digestive tracts and puts it out into your limbs to get you ready to fight or to run. That's why you get butterflies. That's why you feel nauseous. Isn't that amazing? The reason my knee's bouncing and I'm feeling activated there, again, it wants me to run. Heartbeat's going up because the heart is pushing blood and oxygen into my limbs to get me ready to fight or to run. The lightheadedness has to do with the fact that all these chemicals are being released and I'm not exercising. It's like sort of like you can think about it. It'd be like filling up your car with gasoline over and over again, but never taking it for a drive. So the levels of carbon dioxide and oxygen get mixed up in our head, and that's why we can feel a little bit off. Sometimes before presentations, when I used to do them in person, I would run through the hallways so I could burn off some of this energy that Andy was giving me. One time I did it in this hallway that I thought was totally empty. It was dark, but I was sprinting. While I was sprinting, like 4 parents opened up the door and just saw me sprinting there. So I got to explain what I was doing. So many young people, by the way, would be better served when they feel anxious if they just sprinted and came back. But what do? We get flooded with all these activation emotion to evoke motion. We're flooded with emotions and we don't motion. We don't move. So that explains a lot of different things too. You can move with an emotion. Every single one of these can be explained. It's a great thing to do for your child because remember, uncertainty equals fear. And if you're more familiar with these different symptoms, then you'll experience them different. They won't have the same impact on you. I promise. Here's a breathing thing I was sharing with you earlier. This works. Uses 3 different science-based things to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which again is the rest and digest system. So what you do is you do this to a count of 4, 7, 8. Diem is what I call it. That's Latin for day, carpe diem, per diem. So you breathe in for a count of 4, forcibly through the mouth, or excuse me, through the nose. Hold for 7. While you're holding, you say, I'm experiencing the emotion of being overwhelmed. And you exhale for a count of 8 through the mouth, tongue at the back of the teeth. Sort of want to make a whooshing noise. And at the end, mantra. My mantra for that one would be small bites, Nikki. So the emotion currently that's hitting me, jabbing me the most is feeling overwhelmed. My mantra for that is small bites, Nikki. When I was young, my grandpa would ask me, how do you eat a whale, Nikki? I'd say, I don't know. I'd say small bites, small bites. So that little exercise, what does that take? 15 seconds or so, 20 seconds? And it uses 3 different things to turn your emotional reactivity down. I do this every day. You can use this to, before you act, if you're feeling angry. You may do this to put yourself asleep. If you wake up in the middle of the night, you can do 4 rounds of 4, 7, 8 breaths. You'll go to sleep. Just something to do. And it's been shown, Dr. Ween, if anybody has I can't remember, but he talks about how if you do 2 rounds of 4, 7, 8 breaths twice a day for a couple months, it's outperforming some of the top anxiety medications. Another thing when it comes to anxiety, so there's Andy right there freaking out. What you can do, so when Andy's freaking out, again, I know his signature moves. I know how he shows up in my body. So I know it's Andy. and I do something like this, and your child can too. Oh, hey, Andy. Good to see you. What's it been? Like 5 minutes? Yeah, okay. I can tell you're concerned. Thank you for the attention. Thank you for the alert. And because I appreciate you and I don't want to resist you, because I know how that goes, what I'm going to do right now, Andy, is I'm going to go through each one of our senses to make sure we're okay. All right. So we're going to start with sight and see if we can see anything dangerous. Nobody peeking through the window, Andy. Look behind us. We're good to go. All right. Now we're going to move into auditory. We're going to listen. Can I hear anything dangerous? Can you hear fan? And that water feature? Nope. No footsteps approaching. Nope. Nothing dangerous. Taste. It's just yerba mate. It's not poison. Nope. Touch. Is anything too sharp or too hot? My chair on fire? No. Touch is good. And smell? You smell smoke? You smell anything dangerous? No. Okay, Andy, amygdala went through all the 5 senses into the environment. Therefore, we can decide, we can make the statement, this is a false alarm. Thank you, Andy, but this is a false alarm. I so appreciate your unwavering, steadfast attention for my safety, but we're good. This is false alarm. You walk through it. That's something your child can do when it comes to anxiety. Because again, you don't want to resist it. And we don't have to allow anxiety to make choices for us. That's what I see with so many young people is their anxiety and other emotions that they see as uncomfortable call the shots. And remember, we know what the choices will be. Emotions tell us to do one of 3 things: avoid, approach, or attack. And we now live in a world where the avoidance emotions, usually the best thing to do with those is not avoid, but to approach. It's called exposure. It's the most effective thing. One of the most effective things to treat anxiety is to expose yourself voluntarily and incrementally to the thing that you fear the most. But for so many of our young people, parents and school staff and others, when they show up and say, I'm uncomfortable, I'm feeling anxiety, we'll just remove the discomfort. And we think we're doing them a favor. We're not. It's about having a conversation about how they can regulate in that moment. It usually starts, I don't want to sit in the front of the class. We go, cool. So we move them to the back of the class. And then the classroom, they don't feel comfortable. So we put them in the counselor's office or that one room in the administrative wing so they can do their class there. But the thing is, anxiety and fear, it's a bully. It doesn't stop. Our comfort zones are either expanding or retracting. So, so now you're doing the class from the counselor's office, and then it's the whole school. Anxiety tells us it's the whole school. So we got to be homeschooled. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with homeschooling. I'm just saying if we homeschool solely out of the reason that someone is experiencing anxiety, well, I've worked with enough people to know that anxiety won't stop there. I've worked with so many young people who'll be having panic attacks in their bed with the blinds drawn, because that's how anxiety works. So it's about introducing them to their body, to breathing, to feeling the sensations, and creating strategies in which they can approach that which they want to avoid, with us by their side. And so much of it has to do with psychoeducation, explaining what is going on. So what can parents do? One thing I want to talk about, I got 20 minutes. Oh, I'm not going to get to the end of this. It's okay. One thing I've noticed is during the pandemic, the conversation around it is, there's just been a lot of parents and school staff venting with or within earshot of their kids about school. And I don't think we should be doing this. There's so many students who are struggling to engage with school prior to the pandemic. Now there's a pandemic and their parents are frustrated with the decisions that are being made, how the classes are being delivered, the lack of accountability. You can be frustrated about all those things, but I encourage you not to do it in front of your child. If they're already leaning towards wanting to disengage, to avoid, well, that's going to tip the scales. And I've never seen a time in which adults have been venting with youth about their school. And I think it's having a huge impact on our youth. You can validate their frustrations without adding to it with your own. Now, I think it's important for parents to vent, but not with their kids. Vent with your partner, vent with other parents. I think school staff can vent with other school staff. But I talk to like 20 to 30 young people every week through this. And I'm hearing about teachers and parents really joining in like a venting vortex. And I just think the energy that young people need right now is different. They need our strength. They need our positivity. It doesn't mean that we can't validate what's going on, the difficulties, the differences. But young people look to their elders when something like this happens, when there's a massive change, huge catastrophe, pandemic, whatever it may be. They look to the adults in their lives to check on how to think about this, how to feel about this, and most importantly, how to respond to this. So many young people have been looking to the adults, and the adults are panicked. They're freaking out in front of their kids. They're being pessimistic and catastrophizing. And all of that is contagious. There's something to think about. There's a big blame game going on. I talk to parents, talk to school staff every week. Parents blame the schools, schools blame the parents, and the kids are in the middle. It's like I don't think I've ever thought this before. I hope this makes sense. It's like divorced parents. Like talking badly about one another, the triangulation. Your mother, your father. I think the best what we can do is create a united front for our young people. And again, it doesn't mean that you just go look on the bright side. Cheer up, hang in there. No, you can validate their experience without adding to it. Remember, validation isn't agreement. Validation isn't approval. If you validate the experience of your child, it doesn't mean that you agree with it. When it comes to this pandemic, I was thinking about this. My favorite movie is Good Will Hunting. The reason that I sit here is because I watched it. I wanted to be Robin Williams. I saw it when I was a junior in high school. I was like, I'm going to be a therapist. I'm going to work with like boy geniuses from Boston who had a rough side. Oh, by the way, his Robin Williams character, Sean, he does incredible therapy. That's the only movie, that's the only TV show, that piece of media that shows good therapy. Other than the part where he chokes Will. That's not good therapy. Everything else, fantastic therapy. But I wanted to share this with, in terms of the pandemic. You'll have bad times, but they'll always wake you up to the good stuff you weren't paying attention to. And my hope is that when we come out of this, that there'll be deep gratitude for the things that we took for granted and took advantage of, I guess. My worry is there'll be many people who arrive outside of this pandemic and return to their normal lives with sort of a, it's about time attitude. I hope we can show up with gratitude. I can't believe how many things I took for granted, the people I took for granted, the hugs, the games, the get-togethers, high fives. I haven't met with anybody in this office since March 11th. So I think that's something that we can do is acknowledge what is going on by really thinking about looking forward to what's on the other side and not taking it for granted once we arrive there. Gratitude is incredibly important. I think it's one of the most important things that parents can model for their kids. Do you model gratitude? Okay, I got 15 minutes, speed round. All right, so when it comes to those executive functioning skills, I often hear, my child has deficits in executive functioning skills. I think a lot of that has to do with parents. Now, you love your child so much that maybe you lobe them. I'll explain that. You sort of become their prefrontal cortex, their frontal lobe, because you love them so much. You become their surrogate frontal lobe. You take care of those executive functions for them. I often think, when I get the call, it's like, my child has executive functioning deficits. And then after I talk to the young person, I'm like, oh no, he doesn't have deficits in executive functioning. He just has a really sweet setup. The parent will be like, excuse me? Like, you do it for him. That's awesome. I wish I had that. This guy's got like a personal assistant, a chauffeur, a concierge. Why would he mess with that system? So many of our students, our young people's difficulties with executive function isn't because of some wiring or some deficit. It is because they have people in their lives taking care of it for them. Again, I would love to have that. Somebody wake me up 3 or 4 times, remind me of what I got going on, put my stuff by the door. If I forgot something at the office, they run it by, send an email to somebody explaining why I wasn't there. Sounds nice. We can't expect our kids to give that up, but we have to step aside so they can step up and develop these executive functions. Julie Lythcott-Hames talks about our youth learn in a 4-step process. Step 1, you do it, they watch. Step 2, you do it together. Step 3, they do it, you watch. And step 4, buckle up. They do it and you don't watch. So think about that. This is something I encourage all parents to do. With every specific task, whether that be academic, home, or otherwise, what step is your child currently on? 1, 2, 3, or 4? And here's the thing. If you care about your child and you want them to develop self-confidence and self-efficacy, whatever word you want to use, success, what you need to do is not go back steps. If your child is at step 4 when it comes to turning in their homework, you don't go to step 2 or step 1. That takes away their ability to develop self-efficacy. And it often sends the message that I don't believe in you. I don't believe you can do this, so I'm just going to take care of it. And I get it. It can be easier for that day just to go back some steps. Just take care of it. It can be easier. But the long term of that is they don't develop self-efficacy. And there's a definition later. Self-efficacy is more important than self-esteem. And there truly is no self-esteem without self-efficacy. And I'll explain it a bit later. So we have these narratives about a generation of young people, that there's an arrested development and they're lazy and they don't have responsibility and they're taking on adult roles later and later in life. And we just sort of blame them. And I kind of look at how the adults in their lives have showed up. When I think about my grandpa, whenever he's asked me about my job, like, how do you do it? Those kids are so lazy. They don't do anything. They stare at their phones. Zero responsibility. Nick, did you know that when I was 16, I was married and had a farm? And my mom will be in the background like, that's not true. No, that's not true. He didn't have a farm. He wasn't married at 16. Anyways, that's sort of something that we do. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. When these young people talk, we talk about them with this arrested development, this delayed maturation. So much of it has to do with us not allowing them to step up and take control of their lives, take the steering wheel, a real one or metaphorically. We've been so focused on a generation's self-esteem, telling them that they're amazing and they're perfect and they're unique. They're special. I like telling young people they're special, but in the same way that you're special and so is everybody else. But there's kind of been a generation that's been told that they're special and other people aren't, or they're more special than other people. And there's no behavior for many of them that backs this belief. So many of them have sort of a identity crisis. My parents and other people have been telling me I'm awesome and amazing and perfect, but I don't really feel like I am because I don't feel like I can do much. That's why self-efficacy is more important than self-esteem. Self-efficacy, the belief in one's capabilities to organize and execute the courses of action required to manage prospective situations. And that's what that step process allows your child to do. Always be aware, what step are we on and how do we get to the next step? Step 4. Like that cartoon. What I think our youth need now from their parents and other people in their life is a combination of these two things, compassion and accountability. Some parents are maybe too far over on the compassion side, meaning they're too understanding of the differences and difficulties of the time, and they're not holding their child accountable. And maybe some parents are too far over on the accountability side and not over here with the compassion. Too far on the accountability side could be like, figure it out. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I don't care. Don't make excuses. Figure it out. So it's a combination of the two, and it'll depend on the young person what the perfect combination is. Some people need a little more compassion, which looks like, gentle encouragement. Some people react better to more accountability, which can be more critical feedback. But it's the combination of these two things that our youth need at this time. And if you can think of a way to combine those two words, I'd much appreciate it. I can't figure it out. Compoundability, that's not bad. If you have an idea, I'd love to hear it. When it comes to this story, I've got like 7 minutes. Okay, I'll be quick. When it comes to compassion and accountability, I want to share the story. This is Carol. She was a professor in graduate school. And I had my second year, I had one of her classes. I actually had one of her classes in my first year. But this was the second year. I was doing pretty well in graduate school, actually really well. I learned how to study and I started to care and I built habits and routines. I was taking her class and I totally forgot to do this huge project. Totally forgot it, spaced it. And so I was up on campus this week and I was gonna go up to Carol and explain why I didn't turn in the project. And so what happened was, it was after class, everybody walks away. I do that thing where you hang out in the back and I walk up and I'm very quiet and I go, "Hi, Carol." By the way, to help picture this, I'm 6'6" and Carol's not. She's shorter. I said, "Hey, Carol, I just wanted to let you know why I didn't turn in the big project. I have something called ADHD. And it makes it very difficult for me to plan, to prioritize and organize and follow through on big projects. So I just wanted to share that with you. But that's the reason I didn't get it in." And the whole time, Carol's sitting there looking up at me, like nodding, like, oh, just a very compassionate face. And when I got done, she looked up at me and said, "Oh, Nick, thank you so much for sharing that. I too have ADHD. So I've had to create systems, routines. I've had to use planners and schedules and to-do lists. And I've had to use those tools on a regular basis so that I can make sure that I follow through and meet the expectations of my job and other roles. I recommend you do the same." It was so great. It was amazing. The first time that I was going to use my ADHD as a crutch. She's like, no, I'm going to hold you accountable. She was using the 4-step thing. I had her the year previous. I'd shown myself to be at step 4 when it came to turning in projects. So because she cared about me, she wasn't going to go back steps. Something to think about. And now I don't know how to finish this presentation in 5 minutes. Every young person I work with, we go through our score. I think when things feel out of control, we need to go back to the basics, and I believe our bodies are the basics. So I look at sleep, consumption, outdoors, relationships, and exercise. Every young person I meet with, we both go through our score, 1 to 10, how we do this past week. 10 being fantastic, 0 being not so good. because I've never met somebody who's improved one or more of these things that hasn't felt significantly better. And we can still do these things during a pandemic, although they may be different or limited. I get it with the relationships or exercise or outdoors, but we can still do this. When things feel big, when things feel out of control, go back to the basics. Check in with your score. They're backed by science. Therapeutic lifestyle changes, they work. Here's some signs of anxiety, disorder, depression, ADD, ADHD. This is my clever slide. Psych. Those are the symptoms of sleep deprivation as well, making the point. Our kids need to sleep well in order for us to figure out if there is a disorder. The Academy of Pediatrics says that our youth need 8.5 to 9.5 hours of sleep. On average, that's 9. So many of the youth that I work with aren't getting 9 hours of sleep. In fact, they're getting less than 7 hours of sleep. And if that's the case, our young people are going to begin to develop the signs and symptoms of sleep deprivation. Sleep, that's where it all starts. When I'm working with somebody, I always start with sleep VAL. VAL stands for variance of waking. What that is you take the latest that you wake up during the week and subtract the earliest that you wake up during the week. You do not want a high variance. And oftentimes I work with middle schoolers, high schoolers, college students, and they have this super high variance. They like wake up at noon on Sunday and they get up at 6 a.m. on Monday for school. That's a variance of 6 hours. As I share with people, your body and the majority of your mind has no idea the difference between Sunday and Monday. So if you wake up on Monday 3, 4, 5, 6 hours earlier than you did the day before, your mind and your body will be dysregulated throughout the day. So that's where I always start. Get this variance down. If you're at 6, see if you can get to 4. 4, 3, 3 to 2. It's best to have it at 0, but I realize for many high school students, middle school school students, and college students, that it's impossible. So I always say under 2 hours variance. Oh, this is new. One of my things when I work with students is get the cell phone out of your room. Number one. And the number one answer that young people say to me when I say get the cell phone out of your room, they'll say, "Oh, Nick, I can't. I use my phone for my alarm." Wait for it. See this? I have so many alarm clocks. If your child is in need of an alarm clock, email ndtpresentation@gmail.com, just with an address, and I will mail them an alarm clock. One of the biggest things that you can do for your sleep, for your wellness, to quiet the anxious mind is get the cell phone out of the bedroom. Old school alarm. Stacks on stacks. There's more in the other room. And it's the actual one from the picture. Isn't that great? Okay. Oh, I'm not going to be able to get to this. What should I? We talk way too much about motivation. Motivation is fleeting. It comes and it goes. We can change the conversation with our young people about motivation. It is more about habits. There's a great quote. Motivation is what gets you started. Habits is what gets you there. I like to tell young people, the people who are successful at the things that you want to be successful at, they're not more motivated. They just have better routines than you do. So I use different words, systems, routines, habits, ritual. And I have 1 minute. What do I close with? I've got through a lot of it. None of this, it's all garbage anyways. Don't worry about it. My favorite quote when it comes to parenting. Children have never been very good at listening to their elders, but they have never failed to imitate them. It is about your life, not your lecture. We focus so much on the lecture. They are learning by watching us, especially during this pandemic. How do we manage uncertainty and stress? That's how you can step up as a parent. Think about how you're living. And here's the thing, the further the distance between your life and your lecture, that is something called hypocrisy, and young people can't stand it. We need to change the conversation around failure. We can see it as an event, temporary, shows you stretch your limits, and an opportunity to learn. It's called growth mindset. I'm gonna close with this. Lobster lesson. I'm gonna go like 2 minutes over. I'm so sorry. But I share this with every young person I work with. When I used to work at a high school, I'd always share this with students. They'd be so annoyed with it. They'd be like, don't ask them about the lobsters. Okay, anyways, here it is, lobster lesson. This isn't mine, by the way. This is Dr. Rabbi Twersky. This is his. Okay, how do lobsters grow? Lobsters are a soft, mushy animal that live inside of a hard, rigid shell. And they eat and they grow and they mature within that rigid shell until they feel uncomfortable, till they feel restricted, till they feel stressed. This is a sign to the lobster that it needs to grow. So it goes under a rock to hide from predatory fish, expels its old shell, and builds a bigger new shell. And then it goes out again and eats and matures and grows within that shell until again it feels discomfort, stressed, restricted. That's a sign it needs to grow. Back under the rock again, expels old shell, over and over again. I'm here to tell you tonight that that's the same way human beings grow. We do not grow unless we feel stressed, till we feel discomfort. Pressure is a privilege. I said that before this presentation tonight. And we need to remind our youth of that and change the conversation around stress. And I love this. I always love to close with this. Check this out. This is a parent who went to one of my parent groups. Really like this idea. We're doing regular lobster dinners. I got 5 of these cheesy plastic lobsters, 1 for each member of the family, including my husband and me. Weekly, but we reserve the right to adjust the day when someone needs lobster up. The deal is everybody starts with a lobster at their place setting. When it's their turn, they get to put the lobster in the basket in the middle of the table and talk about some challenge, some stress, and adversity that they're having now or in the past and how it's helping them grow. Isn't that incredible? Not only is discomfort, is stress, is failure okay in this house, it's encouraged for all members of the family. How incredible is that? Not only is it encouraged, it's become a tradition to celebrate growth. Growth is only available in the discomfort. As my grandpa would say, the deeper the plow cuts, the taller the tree grows. And one of the most beautiful stories that ever happened, I shared this in a parent group. A different parent came the next week. She had 3 boys. One was a senior in high school and 2 were in college. And she came up and she said, last week I signed up for swimming lessons. I can't swim. But I want my boys to see me continuing to put myself out there and try new things, and that you can always learn something new. You can always grow. So I wanted to share that and close with that. And I've got a podcast. If you liked any of this, please check it out. It's new. If you could rate it, if you like this, it's free. It's a free resource. If you thought this was garbage, no need to check it out. But if you liked it, please check it out. I really want that to grow. And yeah, that's all I have. I so appreciate this opportunity. It's weird not to see anybody. I apologize for going over. They say the greatest gift you can give somebody is your presence. Thich Nhat Hanh said that, I think. Thank you for your presence wherever you are.
Hello, Nick. Thank you so much. My name is Mike Sullivan. I'm a counselor at Rock Canyon High School, and just want to take a moment. I will tell people about how we did find a way to get this recorded. So I'll explain that in a second here. But first of all, I want to take an opportunity just to thank Nick for taking the time out to be here with our all of our parent community, some of our students, and just sharing some of your knowledge there. Also want to thank the district, Aaron Reagan, who is our lead counselor in the district, who really helped us get this off the ground. And also want to thank Andrew Hood and the IT team to kind of help us with all the technical issues. So finally, we want to ask everyone to please take a moment, it'll only take about 30 seconds, and give us your evaluation. This is about Rock Canyon has done about 8 of these in the last few months, parent nights on different topics. And we're learning as we go along, just like everyone is in the pandemic, and your feedback is super helpful. So you will notice at the bottom, right below the YouTube video feed, there's a link. And in that link, it says, if you just go to that link, it is the tinyurl.com/Nick Thompson event. If you would please go there and take 30 seconds to do that, that would give us some good feedback about how we might be able to do this in the future events. And Nick, you have a couple more comments, huh?
Can I answer questions, or would that be a bad? I love answering questions. I don't know if that's possible. If you're like, dude, I got things to do, I want to shut this down. But I usually do these in person, and that's my favorite part. I don't know if that's something that could be a part of this or no. I should have asked that before, huh? Put you on the spot like that.
Well, I'm open to it. Aaron, I'm not sure how you feel if we did 5 or 10 minutes worth of questions for those who want to stay. For those of you who have to leave, please do take a moment
Yeah,
to do the evaluation.
sure.
Aaron Reagan, are you okay with that?
Absolutely.
Okay. What I'll
Absolutely.
do is I will look at the questions in the YouTube feed and I'll
Okay.
read them off to you, Nick.
Okay.
So if anybody does have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat in the YouTube. And for those of you who have to leave, thank you for taking the time to be here tonight, and hope that you can pass on this information and knowledge. And oh yeah, the recording. We will, as soon as we get where the recording is going to be located, I will email all the registrants where that recording will be at, so you can share it with other people who weren't able to attend tonight. All right, so any questions? We'll just take a few minutes here and I'll read off any questions that might come up. We're getting lots of thank you, Nicks, for your presentation.
Any complaints? Maybe there's a question within the complaint.
Well, Nick, I think what the issue is that you covered everything that could possibly be covered. So that's what's going on here.
Oh, and one of those slides, it's like, okay, homeschooling, I get it. What can you do? I say this: replicate and imitate as much as you can from the school experience at home. So what that looks like is do hygiene. Get up and do hygiene. I remember talking to a young person who's like, yeah, people can't smell my pits on a Zoom call. And I'm like, I know, but the shower isn't for them, it's for you. So go through as many of the motions as you did with school, because that cues the brain. Don't do school from bed. Create a sacred study space. The acronyms, I created one: SACRED. S is for specific space. A is for accessibility. Have everything that you need within reach. C is sit in a chair. Sit in a chair that makes you sit upright. The body will communicate to the brain to be alert, to pay attention. So many of our young people are reclined or laying down, which sends a message to the brain not to pay attention. What's next? R, routine, make it a routine. E, eliminate distractions. Get the phone out of the room. Don't have screens around. D, decorate to motivate. Make the space an enjoyable one to be in. I'm telling young people, in between classes, do a lap around the house. At school, in between classes, you'd walk through a hallway. There's bilateral stimulation. You move. There was socialization. Get outside. Don't take a break from a screen with a screen. You got to shift up the energy. Football players at the halftime of the Super Bowl don't get a game of pickup basketball going. No, they shift the energy. They sit, they hydrate, they reflect, they plan. So during those breaks, get up, movement breaks. Create as much of the school process as you can at home. And I know it's difficult, but it'll increase the likelihood of getting into a routine that is conducive to being able to access those executive functions.
So Nick, there's a question about what are your tips for younger kids, that there's especially kids who are maybe younger elementary, compared to some of the things you talked about that were more applicable to high school and middle school.
I think young people are ready for so many of the concepts that I share earlier than we give them credit for. When I first did my podcast, I said it was a podcast for parents of adolescents. And then people who listen to it who have younger kids, 5, 6, 7, 8, they say you have to take that off because it applies. I think young people can begin to identify their emotions very, very early. Build that self-awareness. A buddy's got a 4-year-old daughter who can describe the sensations in her body, give it a name, and then her dad will provide her with options to regulate herself. So I'll say her name is Nikki. Nikki, do you need to wrestle? Do you need a snack? Do you need to go potty? Do you want to run? Do you want to paint? So you create this set of options based off of the young person identifying that they're dysregulated and what they can do to regulate themselves. So when it comes to anything that I said, I do think that it can apply to young people. And it's amazing how young people can develop emotional intelligence. Oftentimes, it's a 5-6-year-old can have more of the pillars of emotional intelligence than many high school students. When you start that conversation early, it's wonderful. Maybe you change the language a bit, but the concepts remain the same. When it comes to knowing when you're out of sorts, what could be due to regulate myself? How is the environment impacting me? Am I breathing shallow? You can put a Beanie Baby on your stomach and lay down and do 4, 7, 8 breaths. Watch the Beanie Baby go up and down. That's something young people do that's incredible. If they're feeling out of sorts, if they're having trouble sleeping, saying they're excited, they could do that. I'm trying to think of all the different things that I said. If there was a specific question about young people, I'd love to answer that.
A couple other questions here.
Okay.
There's a few that have come through.
Okay.
But one is addressing just the issue of getting kids out of bed. It looks like the parent asked, can you sort of go cold turkey on the hand holding for getting kids out of bed, or do you have suggestions?
Yeah, there's a wild one. There's one that's pretty cool. If there's buy-in from the youth, you can practice getting out of bed later in the day. So you lay down and try to relax, and you set an alarm. And when the alarm goes off, you launch yourself out of bed, and you do that every day for a while. That's if you have the buy-in from the youth. I just think that's an expectation that is reasonable to have within a home, is that you're out of your room at a certain time. And maybe I'm old school on this one, but I think that there needs to be certain expectations, and within those expectations, hopefully they're agreed upon, and within those expectations, there are consequences and rewards. I think it's fine to have an expectation within a house that you need to be out of your room. And one of the best ways to motivate somebody to get out of their room is to not have their phone in their room. I encourage all families to have the three components of a media plan, which is a screen curfew, screen-free zones, and screen-free activities. Screen curfews, charging phones outside. Nobody gets them in the bedroom. And for starters, you'd be amazed how young people won't stay in bed or their room if there's not a phone handy. So a little quick trick that I shared. This is what got me to class in college. I had 3 alarms. One was on the dresser, one was in the hallway, and then one was in the shower. So I had a series of 3 alarms that would pull me out of bed and into the shower. And about 95% of the time, I'd be standing in the shower, turning an alarm off, and I'd go, well, might as well while I'm here. So the whole idea of having an alarm clock nearby might not work. I want to invent a bed that launches someone, but I feel that there could be some danger, some litigation involved. But whatever it takes to get out of the bed, if the phone's not there, setting the alarms outside of it, creating maybe rewards in the beginning, but definitely consequences if he doesn't follow through. We got to get out of bed.
So I'm sure you don't have anything to say about this, but do you have any thoughts about checking your kids, the texts that they have in their phones, and making sure you know exactly who they're texting and what they're texting? I say that sarcastic because I've heard some of your other talks.
Oh,
and so I know that you have lots of thoughts
yeah. So
technology.
an interesting thing has occurred. Parents have more access to their children than ever, and yet they're more nervous, terrified, and freaked out than ever. We thought that having more information and access to our kids would make us more calm. I believe we have passed a sweet spot in terms of knowing about our kids. I was working with this dude, he got in a car accident, and his mom freaked out, was like, where's the car at? Like, headed to the maintenance shop, and she was pulling the tracking device out of it. She didn't want the the mechanic to find it and tell the young man that he had a tracking device on his car. I think we should communicate to our young people the level of our monitoring. The Life 360 commercial, I get such a kick out of. I watch it, young people share it with me all the time. The Life 360 commercial is like, when you really trust someone, Life 360. And I'm like, that's brilliant, because that's the opposite of trust, tracking. Now, if your child has shown themselves to be unsafe, and that this is a consequence that has been communicated that, hey, we're going to keep an eye on you because you did this, this, and this, and that was already laid out. But I think we need to give our youth independence and privacy. And I love that saying or quote, I don't know what it is. How do you know if you can trust somebody? You've got to trust them. So I don't know how specifically how old your child is or what the behaviors have led up to it, but I do believe that we are over monitoring our youth. I believe that it isn't providing parents with a sense of calm. I mean, parents can now like access their kids great in a portal. I don't know what your portal is in your district, if it's Infinite Campus or whatever it is. But I talk to young people, they're getting text messages from the parents. Shows missing, it shows missing. I think the pendulum swung too far when it comes to access to our kids. More access, more information doesn't lower your anxiety. I have this joke that someday I'm going to create a school if I totally sell out. There's going to be cameras everywhere and there'll be heart monitors on the kids, and like parents can like log on to see their kid and see the teacher. If the teacher says something they don't like, the parents can vote live, and then that teacher will be fired and the new one will come running in, and there'll be constant monitoring 24 hours a day. You'll be able to see your child, because I think that would be appealing to people. I remember talking to a mom. I was talking about this idea of kids developing to that step 4 and their need to take on a more independent role in society, and how we're limiting them by overprotection or helicopter bulldozer parents. And I was like, your daughter's like, in 6th grade now. I mean, if she goes to college, would you want her like calling you every day, like every problem she encounters? And I was totally off. The mother goes, well, of course I would. Of course I'd want her to call me. So it's basically the idea of, depending on how old your child is, when do we want them to be able to develop these skills? When do we think, if we can wrap them up and protect them from failure and any bad experiences, are we under the belief that they won't experience suffering, stress, sadness, embarrassment, anger later in life? We want our kids to feel these things early in life. We don't want our kids to have the perfect childhood. We want them to have the most of childhood. That's where you develop this resiliency. So I don't know, with the level of monitoring that's going on, if they ever feel like they're developing that resiliency. So I'm bouncing around on a question, but yeah, I believe that we have to communicate how we're monitoring young people. I mean, I had the open door rule in my house. If somebody's in my room, there's an open door. If I had to leave a place, I had to call. There was these certain expectations, but they weren't done, what's the word? Surreptitiously. Because I think we're trying to communicate to them to be honest, to be transparent, to communicate concerns, ask for help. And when we are secretively going through their things, doing some detective work, we're not modeling honesty or trust. I don't know the specific situation you're in, so I hope that wasn't angering.
All right, Nick. So I think what we'll do is I'm going to do one more question here,
Okay.
just so we can model one of your slides, which is making sure people get enough sleep. So we'll make sure we don't go too late here for everyone and for you, of course. But one of the questions, there's quite a few that came up here, but one I'm just going to pull out here because I'm sure a lot of people can relate to it, is that what do you do with the kids' strong draw to technology and things like that, and trying to encourage them to break free from that, to do other things, just because kids are so tied to it and so drawn to it, and in some cases addicted?
Right. Okay. So they release dopamine. So anything that releases dopamine will become highly addictive. I would ask them to watch The Social Dilemma with you. The Social Dilemma is on Netflix. If you don't have Netflix, you can sign up for a free month. That's what I did. Ask every young person I work with to watch that. I think it's a little over the top towards the end, but it gets through to them, because the idea of The Social Dilemma is, I like to say, okay, so you think your parents don't know what they're talking about when it comes to tech and screens and whatever, and you don't think I know all that much. Will you listen to the people who made it? Will you listen to the people who made social media? Would you listen to them about the design? Okay, so that's the first piece, education. The second thing I would say is that idea of the media plan. If you search household media plan, there's this great organization where you can go through it and create your family's own media plan. You can put in the ages of your kids, their names, and create this family media plan, which again includes screen-free zones, screen curfews, and screen-free activities, and all these other things. And so that's a place to start. Yeah, and I think there needs to be limits on screen time. Screens aren't bad inherently. It's when they get out of balance. When a young person says, I only spend 2 hours playing video games a day, I like to do a little math on that one and go, 2 hours a day is a month out of your year without sleep. So that would be like playing video games for, like, I don't know, 43 days straight. Or it'd be at 30 days straight without sleep. So it's about a conversation around balance. And then if it's like, I don't have anything else to do, yeah, okay, let's have a conversation. Let's have a conversation about what are the activities that you can put in. There's nothing to do. That's not true. I'm going to create a list, a long list, and you get to select from this list. And if you don't like anything from this list, you can create your own. But there needs to be things other than screens in our life. That is a dessert. Screens are a dessert. It is not an entree. And with our kids being on screens throughout the day, the hours, the totals are incredibly high. It gives you headaches and messes with you. I got those blue light glasses that I wear when I am on the screen all day talking to people. So I would talk about that, just the expectation that there's only a certain amount of hours, building in those screen-free zone, the screen curfew, and trying to get them interested in something that doesn't involve the screen. Because the greatest things don't involve a screen. And if you can get them connected with and interested in something, an activity, a hobby, a pursuit, an interest that isn't on a screen, then you water that. You put as much, oh, this is fantastic. That's where the praise is, that they're trying that. Or that's gardening, woodworking, art endeavors, writing a book, reading a book, exercise, all types of different things that they can be doing. But I think that should be an expectation. This is a screen, no screen time within our house. But the main thing is everybody has to model it. It doesn't work when the parent says, yeah, it's different for me. I'm actually doing work. You know, putting food on the table, roof over your head. Now, while I get that, that's going to be a difficult argument to have, especially with an adolescent, is that your screen usage is different than theirs. So I say you've got to model it. Let's go for that walk. Let's set it down. Let's do a board game. Let's do a puzzle. Let's make something. Come on, let's go. And making that an expectation within your house. And post the expectations. By the way, don't have 50 expectations. One time a parent shared with me before I started working with them, their family rules. It was 3 pages and had a glossary for abbreviations. I'll never forget. I think it was OOB, 703 OOB, out of bed. But I do think that within a family, there can be 3, 4, 5, 6 expectations that they have as a family for their youth that are posted, that are agreed upon. And one of those really needs to be about screen usage.
All right. Well, thank you. Like I said, I'm sure we could go all night with different questions and the knowledge that obviously is very valued from this community. So once again, thank you everyone for attending. If you could please go to the survey again. Again, it's tinyurl.com/Nick Thompson event. And it's right below the YouTube screen. If you just go down right below the RCTV channel 5, you'll see that there. You can copy and paste it right into a browser and take that. And keep your eyes on a lookout. I have a feeling that we'll be doing similar things like this in the future, and possibly with Nick Thompson again. Hopefully we might be able to circle back and do those other slides that we
I'll get
missed.
to those other slides.
Yeah, right on. So thank you everyone and have a great night.
Thank you.